Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the PodBrother, and welcome to PodBrother Nation. We have here in the studio with us today Steve Newman, banking investor extraordinaire, and he's an expert on what you need to know in the world of finances. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big, nice round of applause for Steve Newman in the house. Steve, how are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, we had a little audience going there for a second. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, we got a little audience.
Yeah, let's do that. So, what are you bringing to us today? What bit of some expertise, some nuggets, some financial nuggets you're going to turn us on to today?
Well, we're going to talk about how the wealthy has preserved their wealth for over 200 years and how it's not publicized in any book or published in any book. And this is what the very wealthy, how they preserve their wealth through what I'm about to show you today.
Okay, bring it on. I'm excited to hear about it because
good.
You know, we need to know this. These nuggets have been swept under the carpet for 200 years, and now it's time to bring some light.
Yeah. Well, this one is big as the Rock of Gibraltar. First, I want to start out by saying this is for those individuals that are high-income individuals, and this is how they don't pay what everybody pays, the grassroots people, in their income tax. So, first I want to start out with things that we're familiar with. In real estate, when we do a real estate transaction for a home, it's called a note and deed of trust. Now, why is it called a note? The note is what the bank gives to cover the collateral. The deed covers the land, and two instruments are tied together to make it one legal document. So we've been doing trust movements since the beginning, but we never knew how they work. Another case in point, they say, well, what's a trust account? A trust account is a fiduciary account that's set up that one will do the benefit for another. That's what a fiduciary is. So you say, okay, we've heard that before too. Another one that's the biggest one, when we got American history, we heard about taxation without representation. Is that correct?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Now, taxation without representation, when the Constitution was set up, these individuals, our founding fathers, when they framed the Constitution, they set up the government where they knew they would be the wealthiest and the grassroots people would pay their taxes. We know that?
So from blueprint, from jump.
From day one.
From day one.
Right.
They put that into the whole kind of systemic system on how taxation was going to happen.
That's right. Then they gave us rules that we have to operate by. I'm going to give you some cases in point. Number one, they say, okay, if you have a business, you need to incorporate, right?
Okay.
So levels of incorporation exist like this. You have corporation, you have sub S, you got LLP, LLC, and you just have your regular incorporation. Now, those are all under statutory law, which each individual in this country, we live in that statutory law. If you go down the street and the speed limit says 35 and you do 50, when you get that ticket, that's under statutory law. So, now we're going to talk about something on how to do business in another arena, and that's called common law. So you say, what is common law? Common law is where you operate under the federal statute. So if I create a trust, my trust is under common law, not statutory law. So remember, just a reminder, corporation, LLC, sub S, LLP. Those are statutory law. Common law has a trust, which you can do any business whatsoever. You don't have to file it with anyone, and it is not regulated by the corporation commissions of every state. Did we know that?
No, we did not.
Okay. So you say, well, how do the wealthy keep all their money? Well, I got a form here that shows what I'm going to talk about, that it exists. Now, I say that way because when you're talking this and it's foreign, you got to be able to justify the means to show that this exists. So we pulled up a form here. It's an IRS form, but it's not 1040. It's a 1041. Most people haven't heard of a 1041. So you say, how does that fit? Well, the third box down on the left-hand margin of the top of the form says a complex trust. Well, what is a complex trust? A complex trust is where you put 8 different instruments together, and all these instruments make one document. So let me throw some history back at you. When Bobby Kennedy was traveling in Massachusetts with his secretary, and they were drunk, and that car went off the bridge. Do we remember that?
Yep.
Okay. And Chappaqua, right. He didn't get sued. Why didn't he get sued? Because everything the Kennedys own is in trust. When you have everything in trust, nothing is in your name. You lose the word I own, but you gain the word I control. So all she could get is whatever the insurance policy was on the car for her family. So if you have your car insured like I do, like I have 100, 300, 150, well, the max compensation that the insurance will pay is $300,000. So, but my asset value for myself personally, which is not personal, it's with my trust, I don't have to pay anything because I don't own anything. So in a trust, if somebody passes on, whoever the beneficiaries are, they step up to be now trustees. So you don't have to go through probate. The state doesn't have to tell you how much you owe in estate taxes. The state doesn't tell you when you get it, how you get it, or why you're going to get it, because it's all in trust. And when you go from trustee to beneficiary to trustee, it automatically becomes yours. So that saves the estate tax issue. Now getting back over here to the wealth. Wealth then, with the complex trust, in my trust, it has 8 instruments. One instrument is for my assets. Very wealthy people have boats, cars, limousines, planes, helicopters, mansions in many states, jewelry. Well, all these things are under a trust. They are not just deeded and say, hey, they're in Donald Hughes's name. No. They're in the name of the trust, and I don't have to file it with the state and let them know that my stuff is in the trust because it's my constitutional right to have it.
Which was set up 200 years ago by our forefathers.
Right, and they brought it from England. If you go to England, this information exists. So we see, let's see some little samples of this. PBS shows documentaries on the public broadcast station. And a lot of these documentaries are underwritten by who? People who donate to that documentary. So if I have a passion for documentaries on the ocean, and this one was done with Exxon as a co-contributor, and then it says, when PBS goes off, it says, it was brought to you, this was brought to you by friends like you, and then it says, and the Exxon Corporation, and then it says, and the Eleanor Rothstein Trust. Well, why is that so important? Well, the Eleanor Rothstein Trust, in her pure democracy rights under the Constitution, she wrote a check from her trust to the documentary. So how does that work? Instead of her saying, well, I got $2 million in the bank and I paid 47%, which her tax bracket would be, she has that same $2 million in her trust, and then she takes this form right here that I have on the screen, and she donates that money to the documentary, and they send her what they call is a charitable remainder certificate. Well, how do the charitable remainder certificates come from? Well, you guys ever heard of anything called the United Way?
Yeah.
United Way, when employees work for companies, they may have something in their HR department that says, we contribute, if you contribute $1 a payday to the United Way. The United Way then sends that corporation a charitable certificate, because that's a charitable certificate right there. Other organizations that are charitable are the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Boys and Girls Club. If you donate money to them, when you have a trust, they'll give you a charitable remainder certificate to file with this form that's on your screen. And so that's pure democracy. What does that mean? Pure democracy means I designated where I wrote the money. No one had me send it in because I filed my 1041 and they didn't estimate it and say, well, you owe $8,000. And then you send it to where? The IRS. Is that correct? Yeah. Under the way I'm describing, you don't do it that way. You send the check to PBS, they send you charitable remainder certificate, you file it with this form, and then it's shown that you sent that money from this trust, that you're the corpus of the trust, and they got this money, and you didn't have to pay the taxes to their internal revenue because you don't have any money. Now, does this make sense? You guys got any questions so far?
Wow, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
It's like it's such an epiphany.
Right.
It's like it's a clear bell.
Right.
It's like I want to like dissolve all my corporations and go right straight into a trust.
That's correct. That's correct. And you don't have to file it with the state either. So now, let me tell you what will happen. The Internal Revenue will find out if you know what you're talking about. Because sometimes they'll say, well, we're going to audit this trust. When you go to the U.S. court and you show them your trust indentures to the judge, he will then dismiss the case. Because they're not articles of incorporation, they're trust indentures. And when he sees you got that, he gonna say, oh, they straight. So then the IRS then has to leave you alone. Now, if you mix any rules, and listen to me close on this, if you mix any rules that exist with corporation and common law for your trust, you have already made your thing where it's not bulletproof anymore. So you got to forget the information that they've had us operating under for corporations or sub S or LLC or LLP. You got to forget all that. Forget everything you know about that. And then now you got to learn a whole new book. And this book is called Trust. And this book is for those that find out the newer information. Howard Hughes died without a trust. He's a multi-billionaire. Presidents live today that are in trust. Bill Clinton is in trust. The DuPont family are families that are in trust. And so what they will do is make a shell corporation just as a shell. That's where it came from. It's a big opening and it looks huge, but there's nothing in it until they put something through it. So every now and then, just for good sake, they'll throw some money through it and get the advertisement that they did that. But the main money is kept in a trust.
Wow. Steve Newman, you are my new best friend.
Okay.
I think we got a partnership in creating some live stream podcast tutorials and go into like deep detail, in depth on how all this works.
Right. Well,
surgically dissect, first of all, what's going on and why it's not cool, and then what should be going on and why that's cool, and let's bring it to the masses.
Right. And you can, some of this, you can't go to Barnes & Noble and say, hey, I need the book on trust and how it all works. It won't be there. But if you go to the legislation of common law, nothing has been entered or changed in common law since 1792. And
that is by design, I'm sure.
That's correct. And that's how they keep their wealth, and they don't have to pay it out. Now, a lot of we call it the new boys on the street. A lot of the new wealth doesn't know what I'm telling you. So they go on down the street whistling, and they keep paying all the money. Our ball players, now this is key here, because I've had ball players in Los Angeles and in Oakland. Those guys, we say, okay, he make $35 million a year. Automatically take 47% off the top. Well, why you got to take 47% off the top? Because that's the bracket you're in. So you make $25 million, you're only getting 12.5. So the best thing to do, like I told some guys, and this is a quick tidbit, is let's defer as much as we can until you retire. And then at that time, your tax bracket goes from 47% down to 33%. And then you take the money in smaller amounts. Now, I can offset it in many ways, and this is one way I did it. 2 players I had in Oakland, I had them buy 2 150-unit apartment complexes, and their contracts were for $17 million. The complexes cost $12 million. So I pledged the contract towards the complexes, had the bank lend them the money, and the money they got off of the complexes equal about the same amount they were making with the NFL, but their NFL money was all going to savings and deferment. So they didn't have any tax consequence on the NFL money.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah, I kind of thought that up a long time ago. That was
so what you're saying is you're not just another pretty face.
No, not
you got skills. You got gray matter.
Yeah,
we got some cerebral.
A little cerebral there, a little bit going. So, well, really, I'm what they call that?
Ambidextrous.
That's the word. So
I'm not just another pretty face either, Steve.
I'm with you. We agree. We agree. And so I appreciate the opportunity.
We're like Steve Squared. That should be the name of our new financial show.
That would be cool.
It's Money Time Steve Squared.
Right. So one last quick one I'm going to do. This was the one that gets everybody. Like we were at this big luncheon today. We had 800 people there. And most of them were older, but I've been to the United Negro College Fund things when there is 800 younger or middle-aged people. So this is more applicable. But this is the easiest one. Most people don't know this one. I've been in this business almost 30 years, and I started in mortgages and investment, buying investment properties, and then I went from investing to mortgaging as a broker to a mortgage banker, from mortgage banking into investment banking. Okay, so I covered the whole thing and everything in finances. So now, let's talk about mortgages. Most people live to pay a mortgage, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, well, this is the deal. There's something in mortgages called where you pay a 30-year mortgage for 30 years and you try to hurry up and pay the house off. Is that what we do?
Pretty much.
And that's usually about 40 to 50 to 60% of our income. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to show you one technique on how to pay it off quicker, and then I'm going to show you the other technique on how to recoup the lost opportunity cost. So let me do the first one first. If you have a $100,000 mortgage and the payment is, let's just say $1,000. So instead of paying 12 payments of $1,000 for a year, we're going to pay biweekly payments of $500 and pay the mortgage off in 23 years. Now, that's just a simple one. But let's say if you ain't that sophisticated, let me show you the lost opportunity cost. You're going to pay it for 30 years because you believe like your grandmother, your grandfather, your mother, and now you. Okay. So we pay a mortgage for 30 years. So on $100,000, you're going to pay about $670,000. Under my technique, I'll show you how to pay it off in 17 years. And then the other 14 years, the lost opportunity cost of about $500,000, that's now in your bank account and you're looking at real money. The average appreciation rate for a house is 5% a year, unless you're in California, and sometimes they have dives. Don't we know that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's just factor the 5% over 15 years is not going to gain me having over $500,000 cash in the bank, liquid. Now, how do I get that? The lost opportunity cost works like this. If you follow my technique, you'll pay your mortgage, and then I'm going to take the difference that you would have paid over the whole 30 and then collect that and have that growing in an annuity. So what's good about an annuity? I can't lose any money I put in. Now, I worked on Wall Street, so I know how it goes. If you shoot and roll dice in New York City, the market in the last week has lost over 1,200 points. That's because you're rolling the dice because you don't know what you're doing. Annuities, if you put $1 in, 50 years from today, you haven't lost that dollar. Now, who wouldn't go for that deal? Then who would like to wake up when you get about 50 and you already got a minimum of $500,000 in the bank? That's how you recover your lost opportunity cost. You pay your house off, but then you reinvest what you would have paid for the 30 years into your own cash fund that you control, and it's not regulated by your pension fund, the state, county, or whoever you work for. Does this make sense?
Yeah. So I have a question. And this is going back to, the trust earlier.
Okay.
What's the cost? What's the procedure? What's the timeline? Like what's the steps to get set up with the trust, and what are the costs?
Okay.
And how much do you need? Can you set up a trust? Like, what's a minimum amount to set a trust up? Can you go on like $20, a hubcap, 2 food stamps, and what do you need to set a trust up?
First of all, it's for those individuals that, like I've did this for presidents of companies that would normally be wage earners. So what we do is we have to go to that corporation and ask them to have permission to let that person get their money under their trust, since they're running the whole company, as opposed as to a wage where they take taxes. And most of them will do it once you walk them through the steps. So it's based upon, first of all, every individual and every individual's circumstance is different. So it's no blanket cost. I have to then interview, fact find, and qualify on what you have coming in. And then we'll do a needs assessment to find out if this fits for you. Because if you're a wage earner, this wasn't set up for you. This was set up for those that have their own businesses. So you have to have your own business. Then it has to be lucrative enough that you see the advantage of your trust. Not only just taxes, but let's talk about your assets. What about your houses? If you have 1 or 2 houses, if you have more than 3 or 4 cars, if you have a boat and motor home, how does that protect it? Well, if you hit somebody with that stuff, your insurance policy covers what would be charged back to you coming personally out of your own money. They can't sue you because if they say, well, what do you got, Donald? Well, I don't have nothing. Well, how do you got all this? Well, I got a trust. They can't sue the trust. Most institutions won't lend money to you if you borrow under your trust. You can't, because they already know that you can't be sued. So you have to borrow the money personally and then run it back through your instruments, those 8 instruments I talked about, and run it back through your trust. So then the trust then zeroes out what it would be.
Interesting. Well, I'm about to go on a college tour. My isolated fee is $3,500. I'm hoping to pick up at least 15 to 20 of those.
Okay.
And I'm really liking the trust idea. I'm liking that.
Yeah, that's the best way to go.
So we need to talk. We need to continue the dialogue off camera.
Right.
Steve.
Right.
And let's have some fun. Let's make something cool happen.
No problem, man. No problem.
Is there a website or anything that we can do a call to action for now? Because I know when I post this, people are going to be like, okay, I need phone numbers, I need emails, I need web address. Like, how do I get a hold of this cat? I want more information. Like, blah, 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 blah. Like,
yeah, when we go off air, we will definitely make sure you have all that information. But this is just, let's just say it like in your business, this is just a snapshot of what I know about this financing. And we tell people, like I got clients that have come to me that just came into money and say, hey, I want a Bentley. Well, I go to places and then I say, hey, well, I can buy this Bentley for you. And I know how to get it at cost. Well, how do you get a Bentley at cost? Anybody ever heard of that? I go get the Bentley for what they call dealer invoice. See, there's 2 things. You see a sticker that says MSRP, manufacturer suggested retail price. But behind in that file in that office, when you go talk to the general manager or the owner, I say, now, I'm going to pay you, I'm going to give you your money. He don't care how it comes, but I want you to show me the invoice, and I'll give you 1% over that. And then they say, oh, he knows something. How did he know this? Then the next step, if you finance a car, you go to, it's 2 deals in the car. I get this one for free too. 2 deals in the car, the front end and the back end. The front end is negotiating your deal. The back end is to go on F&I. What's F&I? Finance and insurance. That's when they get you over there. So if you beat them up on the front side,
they get you back on. They get you on the back end.
They get you in F&I. So how do you save yourself in F&I? I go in and I tell the finance manager, let me see your rate sheet, because the rate sheet looks tiered just like a mortgage or an investment sheet. So if you have a 680 credit score, it automatically says on the sheet 6.2% for this deal. It's tiered. But what they'll do to a consumer is they'll say, well, Steve, how does this sound? I'll get you this car if you give me $532 a month. And you may say, well, hey, I can afford $532. But what messed you up is you didn't know what the tier was, and you would only have to be paying $410 for that car. They sell you on payments.
They slide the scale.
That's right.
On the interest side.
That's right.
On the back end.
That's
because
right.
You beat them up on the front end.
You beat them on the front end.
Man, come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah. I'm telling you,
Come
this
on.
is what I do.
Come on, Steve.
This is what I do.
Don't hurt them, man.
I'm telling you, I whoop them up. And I don't have to know the dealership.
You leaving the bruise, man. You leaving the bruise.
Man, I got to do it. I got to go in there and bust them in the face. And then when I do it, they say, well, Steve, you do this in New York and California and anywhere in between? Yeah. Well, do you have to know all these dealers? No. You just have to know the system. Because in the car business, this is the system. It's MSRP, and it's invoice. Then it's F&I, finance and insurance. Well, you got your own insurance card, so they can't get you there. But when you do the financing and they tier you up and you buy a payment, which 11 and a half out of 12 buy the payment, and they didn't know what their tier got them.
That's going to leave a mark.
Right. So this I know would be big here because in the city of Angels, these folks here like cars.
Oh, yeah. And they're all about the payment. They want
right.
the newest, coolest, stylish car
Right.
for what they can
Right.
afford per month.
Right.
So they're not really even thinking about,
Right.
the INF.
They not F&I. They don't think about it because they don't know. And all we do is I have my private client list, and they call me up and say, hey, I had one client that said, I want this new Navigator. And I went over to this one dealer I've been going to for 30 years, and they told me this price. So this is what I did. I said, I tell you what, Miss Judy, she's a big trust fund lady, got trust money. I said, I tell you what I'm going to do. This is how I know I'm good. I said, I'm only going to charge you on what I save you. Did y'all get that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't say I'm going to charge you $1,000.
Yeah.
500,
Yeah.
200, or nothing. I said, I'm only going to charge you what I save you.
What I save you, yeah.
I went down the street. I said, what you want? She said, I want platinum gray with all this in it. I went to another dealership. I said, listen, I got a private client. They got an ironclad checkbook. I need this car right here. I want to see the invoice right now, and I need to take it to her, and I'll be back in 15 minutes. They said, okay, Dr. Newman, let's go. I went and got the car. I saved her $8,400. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what you do. You give me 30% of what I save you. So I made $2,400 in 15 minutes. And the place she'd been going for 30 years wouldn't do that deal for her. That's how that deal works.
Wow.
So
fascinating.
Yeah.
We got to do this again.
We got to do it
Totally
again.
got to do this again.
We got to do it again. Thanks for the opportunity, and we appreciate and hope we shared some information.
Any call to action on the way out? Any place you want to send us?
Not right now.
Not right now? Okay, so
No.
if anybody has any questions, see me.
See you the guy.
info@podbrother.com, and we will get you in touch with whatever you need to know, because this was fun. This is fascinating. I
Right.
never knew talking finances could be so much fun and make my nipple so hard. So,
All right.
Dr. Steve Newman, thank you very much for that.
Thanks for having us.
You are awesome. I'm Steve Kimbrough, the Pod Brother. You guys know who you are, and let me see if I can find myself here. Oh, yeah, there I am. So I'm here behind this microphone. Oh, let me move this camera. So, yeah, I'm here. Thanks for tuning in, and we always have fun. Keep it positive, and for whatever you do, stay in the moment, because in the moment is where the real juice is. I'm Steve Kimbrough, the Pod Brother. Check me out at podbrother.com. And if you want, stick with the Pod Brother, because I got some cool stuff coming down the pipe and more financial information by Dr. Steve Newman. So hold on to your wallet, because we got something we're going to do with that.
Right. So, that puts them out there?
Yeah.
Okay, that's just a start. I start out with them, and then we